So I want to talk to you today about the miraculous and mysterious nature of God. How many of you know that there's a bit of mystery with God? How many of you know that He's miraculous? How many of you know that it can be confusing at times? Everybody say, but God. So I just finished a series last week. It was a 3-week series called The Navigating the Storms of Life. So where I was last week kind of segues right into where I'm going today on this whole subject. I'm going to get to Isaiah 38 here in a minute. I'm going to read through that and what happened with King Hezekiah. But what I shared about last week, what storm number 3 was the storm that God allows. And again, this is part of this miraculous and mysterious aspect of God. He will allow us to go through testing. Psalm 11, verse 5 says, "The Lord tests the righteous." He will allow us to go through storms and trials at times to perfect us, to bring us into a greater likeness of His dear Son, Jesus, and so that we can be everything that God intends, that He can prepare us. You know, sometimes the storm you're in today is to prepare you to face a hurricane tomorrow. Have you ever experienced that? What you think is a major deal right now is only preparing you for something that you might face later that is much greater, and you're going to face it with much more confidence and faith, right? And so we can see examples throughout Scripture. You have Joseph back in Genesis. He was, misunderstood by his brothers, sold as a slave. He was severely tested. And yet, it says in Genesis that God allowed it, and Joseph was destined to be a posterity. He was destined to help deliver the people of Israel. And he didn't understand it at first, nor did his family understand it at first. I shared last week how God tested Abraham, directing him to offer the son of promise, Isaac, as an offering. Can you imagine such a sacrifice? God had already provided the sacrifice, but He tested Abraham's faith and trust. And just as he's ready to offer his son up, the angel of the Lord cries out, no, don't lay a hand on the lad. And there's a lamb already there, prepared. The sacrifice is already there. And so He will allow us to be tested at times. And then the Lord says to him, now I know that you fear God. Sometimes it's in the test that we really find out what's in our heart and our attitude towards God. And I shared some of this last week. Sometimes people turn from God, walk away from the faith because they're going through a trial, through a storm, and they begin to wonder, well, if God is all loving and God is all powerful, where's God right now? And yet He's there with us every step of the way. How many of you have seen the old image and words of the footprints in the sand? Only one set of footprints in those sands. What? He carried us the whole way. He's there every minute. He'll never leave us nor forsake us, not for the slightest moment. And then I looked at Jonah last week. Jonah, he didn't like God's plan of love, mercy, and forgiveness for the Assyrians. You've never done that, right? You've never held on to grudge or bitterness towards somebody, right? You'll all got such good church faces on today. That's really what was going on. Jonah knew God was so loving and so merciful, he would forgive the Assyrians and all their atrocities. Jonah was going to be sent there to be a mouthpiece for God, to tell the people to repent and turn to God, and he didn't want to do it, so he gets on a ship and tries to get as far away from God as he can. God's got another plan. God sends a storm. Jonah gets thrown overboard, gets swallowed by a great fish, and that fish, the whole time that Jonah is upset with God, that fish is taking him to his destiny. Do you realize sometimes when you're upset with God because you're not happy about the way things have gone or what God is trying to get you to do, sometimes the very vehicle that you're in, that job or that situation or that city, may be the vehicle that God is moving you in or through to get you to where you're supposed to be. Sometimes He'll even use incarceration as a vehicle to get you where you needed to be. Shoot, when I gave my life to the Lord on the aircraft carrier back 42 years ago, I soon realized this aircraft carrier, by the way, the USS Independence, some of you got it, was a vehicle taking me to my destiny. I'm telling you, if you've ever been on a naval ship for a long time, you will think you're in prison, okay? Everybody say, but God. You see, when the storm is sent from God because of our own choices, we know it. Jonah knew it. And when that happens, you need to cry out for God's mercy, Jonah 2:2. I shared last week from a favorite pastor and author of mine, A.W. Tozer, 20th century pastor. He's passed on. He wrote in a book, The Root of the Righteous, it is doubtful that God can bless a man greatly until he has hurt him deeply. God will allow us to go through pain at times. Others walking out on our life, rejecting us, abandoning us, sometimes betraying us. Look, if they betrayed Jesus, it's likely to happen to us, right? Doesn't mean God brought it, but sometimes He allows it so that He can bring us to His intended end. He said it's doubtful that God can bless a man greatly until He's hurt him deeply. When I first read those words, I was like, ouch. Later in life, I'd realize this is grace. We don't fully understand it, but sometimes God allows the humbling so that we can walk in a greater place being free of pride and control. You realize that control, sometimes when we get offended or we're upset with someone, we can hold on to that, and that's a form of control, and it's also got roots of pride in it. So God will allow us sometimes to go through things, not because He's trying to break us, but bring us to the place where we say, God, you need to be my all in this. I shared the story of Jacob last week. Wrestled with God through the night. And by the way, it's never good to wrestle with God. It's much better just to work with God. But God will work with the wrestling too. If that's what He's got to do, He'll work with that too. In the end, Jacob was blessed. He was given a new name, Israel, Prince with God. Some of you, I just need to say this, God is allowing your heart to be tested. He's allowing some things to come to the surface. How loyal will you be to Him, even though you don't like the way things have gone? God wants to bring it to the surface. It's part of the miraculous, mysterious nature of God. Let's look at Isaiah 38. You want a good miracle story today? Isaiah 38. This is one of the most remarkable stories in Scripture. It's about King Hezekiah. He's basically dying. Prophet says you're going to die. How many would like to have a prophet walk in and say, you're going to die, get your affairs in order? I'll read the story in a minute. And basically he cries out to God, and God extends his life. Crazy. There's a lot of theology in this whole thing. I won't be able to touch all of it. Let's get in Isaiah 38, verse 1. In those days, Hezekiah was sick and near death. By the way, Scripture says, it is appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment. If you're here or watching and listening, you don't know Christ, there is a judgment. Jesus has come to make a way to restore us to the Father. All of us are going to pass on one day. This generation that will be alive when Jesus returns. Listen, we're going to live. We don't know how long before the Lord, but we're going to pass on. This flesh is going to wear out. Live your life for Christ. In those days, Hezekiah was sick and near death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, went to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Now remember, before Jesus came to earth, died on the cross, and resurrected, Holy Spirit poured out, the Holy Spirit was not given to everyone. After the Holy Spirit was poured out on Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came upon all people, right? And so in this time, the only ones that could really hear from God were the ones that the Spirit of God, the Lord, put His Spirit upon, like the prophets and sometimes some of the kings, right? And so, in this case, Isaiah comes as a spokesperson for God and says, put your house in order. What's Hezekiah do? And by the way, there's a parallel passage in 2 Kings chapter 20 of this. It unpacks it a little bit as well. But Hezekiah turns his face towards the wall and prays to the Lord. Now, in the 2 Kings passage, it literally says at this point that Isaiah has left and he's in the middle court. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. So the prophets come in, get your house in order. You're going to die. Turns around, walks out. You getting the full effect? This is not good bedside manner. How many of you want a doctor like this? No. So he turns and he begins to pray to the Lord. And he says in verse 3, "Remember now, O Lord, I pray, now I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart, and have done what is good in your sight." And Hezekiah wept bitterly. And Hezekiah was a righteous king. Go back and look at that in 2 Kings 18. He came to power, took the throne at age 25. He ended up leading Judah for 29 years. He was right. He tore down the high places, the pillars, all the false worship, all of this stuff. He restored true Yahweh worship. Hezekiah was a righteous king. And the scripture says, by the way, when the righteous are in authority, it goes well with the nation. Amen. Pray for righteous leaders. Pray the corrupt ones get removed. And so he's living righteously, and yet this happens. Listen, sometimes sickness and disease comes on righteous people. It doesn't mean God brought the sickness. It doesn't mean God brought the calamity. Doesn't mean God brought the financial setback or the ruin or you got fired from your job. It doesn't mean that God caused that spouse to walk out on you and divorce. Or it doesn't mean that child that's left and wandered into the enemy's camp. Doesn't mean that you failed as a father or mother or that God has forsaken you. There's two kingdoms opposed to each other on this earth. The kingdom of God and righteousness, the kingdom of darkness led by Satan and all his cohorts. They've been defeated by the powers of Christ and what Jesus has done, but we're in a mop-up operation until Jesus returns in the full consummation of his kingdom. As a result, there is warfare that happens. There are casualties that happen. I was telling Carolyn, I had a revelation the other night. We came back. Listen, you need to be here on these encounter nights on Friday night. Man, I'm telling you, the presence of God filled this place Friday night. This happened the last two Friday nights in a 2 months in a row. We do it the second Friday. It's like God just filled this place. I left later. God was giving me so much revelation. I didn't get to bed till like 11:30. Had to watch a movie even try to calm down. That's good. But I got a revelation here in the midst of all of that. You know, King David said, 1,000 may fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand, but it shall not come near me. Why? Because I'm in you, God. Listen, some of you need to hear this. 1,000 may desert you. 10,000 may forsake you. Even those in your own family may walk out on you. Even those that you're close to may turn their back on you and speak evil of you. It does not mean that God has forsaken you. We're in the heat of battle. David was literally, he knew what it was like to fight and to see men die at his side, even those that he loved and those of the enemy. But listen, God has got your number. You need to stand steadfast in this hour. The enemy has spit out everything he can. Just look at how ravaged our society is and the world is. This is the powers of darkness. But church, this is the greatest hour to shine. Greatest hour for God to be God. Because he is the God of the miraculous, but he's also the God of the mysterious. And so all of a sudden, if you read in the 2 Kings account, the prophet Isaiah, he's in the middle court. But he cries out, Hezekiah is praying. He says, remember now, O Lord, I pray now. You see, even the prophet turned his back on him. And what kind of a pastor does that? Don't look at me that way. Remember now, O Lord, I pray, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Sometimes there is a prayer that can only happen from deep within. It's like groanings from deep within the bottom of a ship. It's one aspect of intercession, what it means. Some of you want your breakthrough, but you've not wept the bitter tears yet. Challenging you. Fast, pray, Say, God, I'm not going to let go of the horns of the altar till I see this thing shift.
Amen.
He prays. He wept bitterly. And somewhere in the middle court, the prophet, after he did his job, gave the word of the Lord. The Lord speaks to him again. Again, the 2 Kings account. He goes back in and tells Hezekiah. And we'll pick up now here in Isaiah. And the word of the Lord came to Isaiah saying, go and tell Hezekiah, thus says the Lord, the God of David, your father, I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. He knows every tear, church. Holds them in a bottle. He knows it. Surely I will add to your days 15 years. Now, of course, me being the analytical person I tend to be, I'm like, well, why 15? Why not 25? It's the mysterious nature of God. But his prayer is answered. By the way, I don't want to know how long I'm going to live, and neither do you. Because you're to live your life each day as though it's the last. You're to live it for Christ. I lost another dear friend. He wrote the foreword to the last book I wrote. Dr. Steve Green passed away Tuesday. Complications of COVID. Passed away. 69 years of age. You never know. Contracted it Memorial Weekend. Passed away 3 weeks later. I've lost lots. Live each day as though it's your last. Well, a friend of mine sharing a story with a couple of others. Friday afternoon, we got done playing some golf, and he starts sharing a story about a guy that he knew, from his hometown back in Georgia and college and different things, and ended up being trained as a medical doctor, then went into the U.S. Navy, was going to be a flight surgeon, the whole thing. And back then, in that time, back in the 60s and stuff, he's a little older than I am. He's in his 70s. He's telling this story about his friend Sonny Carter. Sonny Carter ended up not only serving faithfully in the Navy, he became a fighter pilot. Because back then, the flight surgeons had to learn how to fly. And he loved it so much, and he was so good at it, they go, why don't you learn how to fly F-4s? So he started flying Navy F-4s, and then the whole thing. He actually went to Top Gun school. How many of you have seen the new Top Gun, the Maverick movie? Man, I was in the Navy when that first one came out. This second one, I like it even better, okay? Nothing like, by the way, when I was in the Navy on the aircraft carrier, they do flybys. And never forget, we had my first cruise, we had F-4s still. Then they switched to F-14s. And, and man, those F-14s that come by and they just cranked it right by. Literally, the salt spray off of the ocean, you're on the top of the flight deck. Anyway, back to Sonny. Sonny ended up becoming a fighter pilot, Top Gun school, all this stuff. He ended up becoming an astronaut. You can Google him, find him, Sonny Carter. He ended up being at NASA, one of the key guys that helped unlock everything that happened in the Challenger accident in 1986 when the space shuttle Challenger exploded. And all of this story is amazing, how great this man was, all the things he did. And then Danny's got tears in his eyes. He begins to tell the story. He goes, and he's on a flight. He's going it was something with NASA. They were flying, had to go to Jekyll Island, Georgia or something. There was some meeting, I believe it was Jekyll Island, some meeting or something. It was, I think, in 1991. And Sonny, a U.S. senator, and someone else, they were on a Delta airline flight from Atlanta to Jekyll Island. It was a twin-engine prop, puddle jumper type thing. And a malfunction happened on the aircraft, okay? And the prop, I think, on the right side of something happened, the tilt of it caused the airplane to flip. The plane flipped, crash landed, everybody on board died, including Sonny. You never know. He was a great man. The things that he did in the short time that he lived, amazing. You don't know. Live your life for him. I heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Surely I will add to your days 15 years. Even if you live to be 100. My wife's great aunt Betty just passed away. She was 101. Precious lady. Loved people. Loved God. So creative. Was amazing school teacher. She was an amazing lady. And yet 101 doesn't seem that old anymore. How many of you know 100? How many in the room feel like 101 doesn't seem that far off? Okay, all right, maybe don't raise your hands. Okay. Right? Live your life for him. Go and tell Hezekiah, I'll add 15 years. I will deliver you this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. Remember the story about Jonah? The Assyrians were wicked. From the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. And this is the sign to you from the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing which he has spoken. Behold, I will bring the shadow on the sundial, which has gone down with the sun on the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backward. In the second king's account, actually the prophet says, what do you want? You want it to go forward 10 degrees or backwards 10 degrees? He goes, oh, well, going forward is easy. Let's have it go backwards. 10 ticks on the dial. And so the sun returned 10 degrees on the dial by which it had gone down. Everybody say he's mysterious. This is the writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, when he had been sick and recovered from his sickness. I'll pick that up here in a minute. So let's unpack this. The Bible contains both the elements of the miraculous and the mysterious church. The union of the miraculous and the mysterious nature of God is found in this passage. When we engage both, let me read verse 21. Now Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and apply it as a poultice, or as like a bandage or a compress, on the boil, and he shall recover. And he did. He recovered. So it's this interesting thing. God says you're going to live 15 more years, and yet the prophet says, hey, do some medical treatment. Interesting, right? So when we engage both this miraculous and mysterious nature of God and his promises, we were then able to appropriate by faith the object of our hope. Listen, there's 66 books in the Bible, full of promises. There is a miracle there for you and I. We need to believe it. We need to go after it. We need to understand his word, and we need to hear the voice of the Spirit. What is the Spirit of God saying? The Spirit will highlight what the word's saying. The Spirit will also speak to your heart about things, and you need to believe him, to trust him. Similarly, it's the engagement with the mysterious that we come face to face with God, who makes the impossible possible. He steps beyond the notions of natural law and brings us into the realm of the supernatural and the mysterious. Now, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that humanity loves the supernatural and mystery. I mean, there's a plethora of sci-fi movies and shows out there, right? You know, the latest thing about UFOs, the government's going to, everybody's like, oh, what about UFOs, you know? People love the mysterious and the supernatural. They're drawn to it. Why is there such a proliferation of New Age and all this stuff? People want, there's things in the spirit, they're hungry for the supernatural, right? Now, at times it creates more questions. The mysterious ways of God in and of themselves testify of his being and of his nature. The problem is, in many of our churches, we're afraid of the supernatural or to talk about it. How would you feel right now if all of a sudden the glory cloud of God just began to fill this place? Some of you would be like, yes, we've been praying for this for you. Others of you might be like, what is that? This is a weird church. I'm out of here. "20 years ago, this summer in August, I was on a missions trip with a few pastors and Dr. Randy Clark, who's our overseer of Global Awakening network of churches we're part of. We're in Mozambique, Africa. And many of you have heard of missionaries Roland and Heidi Baker, and God is just moving, and so many are coming to Christ, so many healings, miracles. Well, there's this other thing that's happening in their ministry over there, and that's that people are being raised from the dead. And so it's crazy. I remember meeting a Mozambican pastor, and he's got me and two other pastors. He brings us into his thatched roof church with dirt floors. No air conditioning, by the way, everybody. It's pretty hot over there. And he brings us in there, and he takes us up to the front where the altar area is and his podium. He goes, well, this is where the first of 3 people were raised from the dead. And us American pastors are trying to process this. So we're in this meeting one night. So there's so many stories and miraculous stories. Randy decides that he's going to have a record some of the dead raising stories. And so I'm not exaggerating. This is late at night. We're in the food area where all the food's prepared for all the missionaries and the short-term teams. We're there. And we're all crowded in there. And it's like midnight at night. And people, we have two of the pastors, one's a pastor's wife, and another brother, they're telling these dead raising stories. And we're all just like you are right now. We're just riveted. And I can't even do it justice. I mean, the stories. But the one that I remember in particular, and myself, and as they keep telling these stories, the presence of God was getting stronger and stronger in the room, so that it was hard to sit in your seat. The weighty presence of God. And so, this dear sister, pastor's wife, a small village, she had been used by God to raise 2 babies from the dead. And so, again, being the analytical American pastors that we are, we're like, what's the formula? How do we do this? And she goes, I had no formula. And I knew nothing. We got a translator, she basically said, a woman came to me here desperate. She had her baby who died. And she came to me desperate. Late that afternoon, the baby is dead, not breathing, and she says, Mama, can you do anything? Can you pray? Can Jesus do anything? My baby has died. She said, I didn't know what to do. She goes, I just sat there in a chair all night long holding that baby and just worshiping. She worshiped. She said, I didn't even pray. I just worshiped. I held this baby all night long, and I just worshiped, and I'd doze in and out of sleep, and I'd worship, and I'd pray, and I'd worship. And she goes, all of a sudden, in the morning time, about the time that everybody say sunrise, she goes, all of a sudden, that child, and the eyes open, and the child begins to breathe. I mean, I'm hearing this story, and I'm looking around the room with these other pastors, the guys I know, and we're just like, people are weeping. By now, the presence of God is so strong in there, and it's like 3 a.m. now. Even when I was younger, I didn't like to stay up late like this. I didn't want to go to bed. In fact, we had to be up at 5 a.m. to catch they were going to shuttle us to the airport on the back of trucks, okay, to get us to the airport to fly. We're going to another part of the country. It's like I am not exaggerating, half of us crawled out of the room. The presence of God was so strong, we're just like, we've never experienced anything like this. The miraculous and mysterious ways of God. Hezekiah is dying. Oh, by the way, he got 1 hour of sleep. And I don't even think I slept that 1 hour. I laid there processing all of this. The next thing I know, it's 5 o'clock, get up. And it was like, I was so full of joy though, right? Hezekiah is dying. Everyone is aware the king is dying. Physicians have given up their vigil. The diagnosis is terminal. He's sick and near death. Extraordinary measures of human effort are not going to help here. You can hook a baby up to and try to pop them back into life, but if they're dead and they're dead. Human effort, medical technology, sometimes is not going to do a thing. It looks hopeless. Prophet Isaiah comes to him, thus says the Lord, get your house in order. You might be king, but you shall surely die. You see, this is the moment to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You see, verse 1 of this story says, death, that's the end of the story. Have you ever had that kind of pronouncement in your life about something? There's no hope. It's like the marriage is done. There's no hope. That child's never going to come back to God. There's no hope. Where are you going to get a job? There's no hope. Financial, there's no hope. You've been in jail. How are you going to get a job? The story goes on and on. The prognosis, death, end of story. Everybody say, but God. Verse 2, Hezekiah prays to God. He has a relationship with another king. And that's why he prayed. Do you have a relationship with another king you can go to when your prognosis is death and it's over? You see, prayer is simply communing with God. How is your prayer life? How are you doing? You see, he understood the power in prayer. God instructs us all throughout his word to pray. When you pray, demons are defeated, church. You have to believe that. The powers of darkness that bind and enslave, they're defeated. They're already defeated. And when you use the name of Christ, it binds them up and causes them to have to let go. Got to believe it. Storms are silenced. We talked about that the last couple weeks. Situations change. By the way, I was in our meeting in the midst of all of this. I didn't share this Friday night. God's moving. I'm starting to get revelation, vision. By the way, it happened right after. Felt like the Lord wanted our dear sister Carrie on the flute to start playing. She started playing prophetically, and all of a sudden, that's when the vision started. Boop! Started getting visions. Everything started flowing in the room. It's amazing what God will do. There's no formula to this stuff. You just got to trust Him. What's He saying? What's He doing? In the midst of it, all of a sudden, somewhere along the line of everything that God was showing me, all of a sudden I saw Jesus walk in with a bag, and He's smiling, and He's got this little bag, and it's got all these like gold coins and everything in it. And He goes, there's plenty, don't worry about it. Some of you need to hear that. Come on, church. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. I know gas prices are high. I know inflation stinks. I know it doesn't look good. Listen, Jesus said, if you follow me and you seek my kingdom first, I'm going to provide for you. I'll take care of you. And listen, I own the earth is mine. I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. Amen. He's got this. Verse 5, the prophet says, I've heard your prayer. Or God says through the prophet. The bad news is you've been sick, but the good news is that 15 years are being added to your life. Hezekiah, you've been afflicted, but you're about to be lifted up out of this. Now listen, church, if you have faith to believe this, God's about to change your situation. A lifting is about to occur. It won't always be like this. Some of you have arrived at a destination you didn't set out for. You might ask, how did I get to this place? It's about to change. Tell your neighbor, it's about to change. Come on.
It's about to change.
And by the way, we prayed for some rain there Friday night. We got home, and it rained at our house. It may not have rained at your house. It rained at my house. And I don't know about you, but I want to believe God's going to rain at my house all the rest of the summer. Come on, church. You want it to rain on your house. You want it to rain on this house and every other church across this city and across our nation. It's time for the rain, the latter rain, to be poured out. Believe for it. God's not through with you yet. Don't give up. Trust Him. He's been there all along. In Hezekiah's situation, two things have occurred. God heals him and gives him an extension of life. That's miraculous. God is the healer. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. However, God may not heal you the way you expect. In verse 21 that we read, Isaiah instructed him to apply a poultice, a dressing, a bandage, a compress. He tells him your life's going to live, you're going to be extended, but they do some medical treatment. So we appreciate modern medical practice and medicine. God often heals through the physicians, but sometimes He does heal in miraculous ways. Remember, God is the healer however He heals. It's just as miraculous when He heals through the doctor, okay? Trust Him. Listen, I've told you this story so many times, if you knew, you may haven't heard it. I had a heart attack 3 years ago this last spring, and in the midst of it, the Lord tells me, I'm having this heart attack and back the ambulance, and I'm crying out to God. The pain is so intense. I'm like, God, you've got to help me. And all of a sudden, I see the Lord in a visionary experience, and He tells me three things. He says, you're having a heart attack. Number two, you're going to be okay. And then He smiles and says, you're going to live for many more years. And then He's gone. But I still got the pain in my chest. And I still had to go through having a procedure that night and 2 stents put in and all this kind of stuff. Are you with me? But it was the heart attack that saved my life. You might be confused. It was the storm that helped set me on a different trajectory. I lost 40 pounds. I eat a little better. I got 4 jogs in this week of 3 miles, regardless of the heat, and played golf one afternoon. Come on, church. Sometimes even that which is meant to destroy you, God will use to bring you to another place. I told the Lord today, I said, I don't want to live into my 90s. I want to go beyond that. So eat well, get your cardio in, and take care of yourself, okay? And stay in the Word, all right. The mystery divine intervention. God sends a sign confirming the prophetic word. God will do what God has said He will do. God turns back the shadow on Ahaz's sundial 10 degrees. Just so Hezekiah and you and I will know that God is able to do what He said He will do. God takes time and stretches it out, even though Hezekiah's time had run out. God is both willing and able to stretch time in order to make time. He has the capacity and inclination to intervene in our lives if you believe him. There's two Greek words for time, chronos time and kairos time. Chronos is that which is what we get the English word chronological. It continues day after day after day, right? God steps out of chronos time in this moment into kairos time. It means a suddenly, it means a break-in, it means an intersect of time, right? Remember, it's miraculous and mysterious. God interrupts natural order. You see, God knows the end from the beginning. It's like there's a train, a beautiful passenger train that is all throughout the time of humanity. And it's like God who knows when the train started and knows when the train's going to end. God, and we're just along somewhere along the line of this journey of time. It's like, you know, who are we different than the people 200 years ago, right? Well, we got more technology, whatever, but it's the same. You guys with me? It's the same train. They were on a different compartment on that train. We're on a different part of the train. And it's like God just steps in. And if you will, if you have faith to see this, it's like God stepped in at some point in time when Hezekiah was alive. They were in one of the early passenger cars. And God steps in. It's like God can stop the train at any moment, step in and go, listen, God's the one who invented time travel. I like those sci-fi time travel. Anyways, okay. He steps in and all of a sudden, there he is. And that's how it is. We have a hard time because we only see our finite moment of time. And God sees the end from the beginning. He knows the days fashioned for you when there was yet none of them. He knows you're sitting down, you're rising up. Are you with me? He intervenes natural time. So even the sundial will testify of how great God is. I remember one of my pastor friends, and some of you know him, is Dr. Tom Jones. He retired. He stepped down as senior pastor many years ago and has been the executive vice president for Global Awakening for many years, and now he's actually stepped aside in that role. But I remember Tom, he was raised in Church of God of Cleveland. He always mentions that to me when he was a kid. Pentecostal denomination back, I believe in South Carolina he was at, but it's kind of a southeast denomination. But I remember him telling me, he goes, when I'm like 8 or 9 years old, he goes, we used to have these big camp meetings in the summertime. People would gather. He goes, I remember we're at this big camp meeting, the Christians, and we're all there, and it's like the presence of God got really strong. He goes, I don't even really understand it, but all of a sudden, my grandfather takes me, and he puts me on a chair, stands me up. He goes, Tommy, do you see that? He goes, see what, Grandpa? He goes, look, do you see that like cloud right there that's moving from the left and it's kind of moving across the people to the right? He goes, I see it. He goes, it was kind of bluish and purple and was kind of moving and it was just, and he goes, and Tom, I just, goosebumps. He goes, Tom said, everywhere that cloud was the glory of God. It moved across the people. Everyone that needed healing, as that cloud went over them, they were miraculously healed. And Tom's grandfather told him, he goes, don't ever forget this moment. Tom, out of everybody I've ever met, he is one of the guys who pursues the glory of God more than anybody. It wrecked him. Time he was 8 years old. I pray to God, my grandkids. Come on, church. How would you like to set your kids, your grandkids, or get the kids from the street, set them in here because the glory of God is in such a way. The miraculous, mysterious nature of God. It's possible. Do you believe it? Stories of Azusa Street in 1906 and the glory of God being so thick that the kids would play hide and seek in the glory. We don't have a grid for it because we're used to a common church. We don't know what it's like. Okay, for those of you who need something studious, the Broadman's Bible Commentary, Volume 5, 1971, page 295, concludes the matter in this way. The return of the shadow from the direction in which it was traveling was an impressive miracle. How this was done is not indicated. Look, theologians, you can't wrap your stuff around your mind. Listen, God is God. And he does things in ways we're just never going to figure it out.
That's right.
Nobody but God can step in and make the sun move. There are some things about God you will never understand. There are some things about God science will never know or understand, nor the scientific method able to explain. I have a bachelor's in electronic engineering. I've worked at NASA. I've helped design systems that actually monitored the outside of the space shuttle after the Challenger. Listen, science can't figure this stuff out. And NASA can't either. You know, I'm going a little long today, but you guys, okay, hold on. Do you know that a light year is 5.88 trillion miles? Our Milky Way galaxy is 52,850 light years across. So do the math, 5.88 trillion times 52,850. That's a lot. Everybody say God is big. The Milky Way is made up of some, they estimate, between 100 and 400 billion stars. Stars like ours right here in our little corner of the Milky Way galaxy. And oh, by the way, the Hubble telescope estimates that there's something like there's 100 billion galaxies out there. But now scientists realize they're not really sure. It could be way more than that. I think God's got this, everybody. He's way bigger. Way bigger than what we realize. The Bible is God's word. It's for the childlike in heart and faith. He reveals himself to those who are of low estate, but the proud, the wise, the mighty are confused by the nature and ways of God. Isaiah 55:8-9 agree with this. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. As the heavens are high above the earth, so are his ways and his thoughts towards us. There are moments in your life and my life when nothing less than divine intervention is what you need. The situation may be serious, the circumstances may be desperate, the prognosis may seem helpless. The only thing which can save you in those moments is the divine intervention of God. Here's why. I know I can't make it myself. When I was in the back of that ambulance, believe me, I'm like, am I going to make it through this night? By the way, 1/3 of the people that have the kind of heart attack I did, it's called the widowmaker, the low air anterior descending. They're only 1/3 of them, their only sign is they die and go see Jesus, I hope. Are you with me? When you're in a moment like that, you need to know, I can't fix this, but Jesus can. My friends can't help me. My wife can't help me. She was praying. She had everybody praying. Listen, only God in those moments. Perhaps it looks like God has forsaken you, that your faith has failed you. Anyone need God to step in today? Our God is an interrupting God. He knows how to make something out of nothing. He knows how to turn our situation into a miracle. Romans 8:28. God will work all things together for the good to those who love him, to those who are called to his purposes. Isaiah 38, I'm almost done, 9-20. Hezekiah tells this story. He goes on to say, basically, I'm going to paraphrase. I was in the prime of life, but it looked like I had to leave. I was spending my time in death's waiting room. I couldn't find God. I couldn't see my neighbors. I'm paraphrasing that passage. My life seemed hopeless and over. God became like a lion to me. Verse 16, O Lord, by these things men live, and in these things is the life of my spirit, so you will restore me and make me live. By these things all men live? In other words, all men go through hard times. Jesus was right when he said, John 16:33, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Tribulation, from the Greek, it literally means pressure, oppression, stress, anguish, adversity, affliction, crushing distress. I love what verse 17 says. For you have cast all my sins behind your back. In the Message translation, it says this. It seems it was good for me to go through all those troubles. Throughout them all, you held tight to my lifeline. You never let me tumble over the edge into nothing. But my sins you let go of. You threw them over your shoulder. Good riddance. This is a hard word. Hezekiah looks back over his life and sees that God was there for him on the brink of death and said, it was good for me. I'm telling you, church, it was the heart attack that saved my life. Sometimes the things you go through, it may look like... I was telling someone this the other day. My dad walked out on my mom, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids when I was in my early teen years. When he walked out and left and divorce followed and our family was ransacked, do you know what was good for me? Not at the moment. It was painful. I needed some healing later. But you know the God who works all things together, that was the beginning to set me on a trajectory to want God in my life. Are you with me? When the enemy brings in a flood, come on. When the enemy comes in like this, God, boom, he raises up a banner of victory over us, church. You've cast all my sins behind your back. Hezekiah is saying, listen, I learned to trust him when it made no sense. I learned to trust him when I had more questions than answers. How about you today? Do you trust him if you got more questions than answers? God has grace and mercy behind his back. He has compassion and forgiveness behind his back. He has miracles and healing behind his back. He has it all behind his back. You don't see it. Not when you're going through it. Why behind his back? It's in the nature of God to protect you from you. Therefore, he put your sin and my sin behind his back, casting our sin in a sea of forgetfulness. If you'll forget it, he already has. Listen, after my dad walked out, I was so angry. I went in the Navy to try to escape just going to jail or something. Are you with me? He sometimes will do things just to protect us from ourselves. It's in the nature of God to understand you in ways no one else can. He knows your frame. He remembers that you and I are dust. He knows everything about us. It's in the nature of God to love you with a love that won't let you go. No one loves you when you're unlovable, but God does. And a healthy church body does too, I'll add. And by the way, and I know I'm going a little long, we should not look at anyone according to the flesh any longer. We should look at them as alive in Christ. The old has passed away. Behold, all things have become new, entirely new creations in Christ. God, if God's put it behind his back, why are we looking and getting in front of us at one another? Put it behind our backs. Let it go. He became sin who knew no sin. He carried my sin, your sin on his back on that cross so long ago we could be found in him. You have cast all my sin behind your back. It's a secret place, a hidden place in God. He removed our sin. It's gone. Our life is now hidden in Christ. It's a place of refuge in Christ who become the mercy seat for us. We are secure in him, protected and covered by him. Would you go ahead and stand? I want to give an invitation for prayer today. 3 areas in particular, but I certainly don't want to limit God in any area. Number 1, those who need his mercy. Maybe you've never given your life to Christ, or maybe you've been wayward. Listen, the Bible says today is the day of salvation. You may think you have tomorrow. You don't know. Make a decision today. Secondly, for those who need hope. Anyone need hope in the room today? God knows the end from the beginning. The day's fashioned for you. Cry out to him today. For those who need healing, who knows, today may be your miracle day. What if today the Spirit of God said, boom, and that thing that you've been praying for to get healed of or delivered from or set, what if today was the day? You don't need a prophet. You don't need somebody to come up and tell you, you're going to be healed today. What if God today, boom, and it happens? Come on, church. Father, I pray right now, I pray all over the room, Holy Spirit, worship was amazing. Try to bring, God, what you wanted to be shared today. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would do what only you can do, God, in this place. Lord, some need to reconnect with you, to know you, God, like they've never known you, to finally say, enough is enough. I've tried my own way, God. I'm surrendering completely to you. I pray for them today, God, those that might be watching. I pray, God, they completely run into your arms. I pray for those who need hope today. God, verse 1 is not the end of the story. God, verse 3 and 4 is the answer. God, there's a lifting. There's an extension, God. Where there's been death prophesied, Lord, now we declare life, God. I speak to where the hope has been dashed, and I speak life once again. I speak resurrection life that only Jesus can give. Amen. And God, those that need healing today, God, we sung it, break every chain. Lord, today, God, we pray the chains would be broken, freedom would be released, healing, God, physical healing, emotional healing, whatever needs to happen, God, we pray would be released in this place today, God. Amen. In Jesus' name.